This is part 2 of Let's Build a Data Studio community visualization. In this video, we're gonna create our first table. To get a cool result right from the start, I used an interactive JavaScript library. So we're gonna take a look at this first. I completely fell in love with this library here. Let's check it. So you see it's a basic table that we need, okay? You can sort ascending and descending. You can select how many entries per page you like to have. I'm going with 15 here and it's showing me some information down here. I can use the pager to switch between the different pages. And I can even search for some values like layers. I'm seeing layers right now and it's very quick. So I like to use this table here. Now let's go back to the information page and check all the different settings here and how to use it. And here it says, okay, we can use the JS table with JavaScript and the style sheet with these link rel and script tags. But this is not possible for a Data Studio community visualization because we only have our 4 different files and we have to include the code manually. So we have to download these here, or maybe we download the whole package later. But first let's check some other settings here. Under point 3, it says we just have to initialize the JS table on our existing HTML table and then we are done. So we're gonna need a basic HTML table like this, and then we have this statement here, this JS table on our HTML table. And then we should be done. Let's download the package and do this. So we click on download. We download the package, show the results. And then we open the source folder and we see 2 files here. We see one CSS file, which is like the new CSS format. And second, we see the JavaScript file. We're going to open this as well, and we see it's a big library with all the different functions and stuff and all the settings. So the interesting thing when I looked at this was that in the beginning of this JavaScript file, in the first couple lines, we see some default configuration. So we might take a look at this a little more in a later video. But first, let's copy this code to our visualization JavaScript. Let's copy it, let's say, right before the function starts here, and just paste it. All right. Maybe we delete this last line here because it says like window.js table equals the JS table. Let's delete this. And with the CSS, we're gonna need to convert this CSS because Data Studio does not support SCSS. You can only use the regular CSS. So we're gonna copy this code. And then we just Google for some SCSS to CSS converter, like this. We paste it here and we use the new CSS code and copy it to our styled CSS, like this. So these are all the preparations. Now we can start to build the table. Let's look at the HTML table again. So we see the table element with the table head, a TR, which means like table row, and for each of our dimensions and for my metric we need a TH element, and then we have the table body element with TR for every row of our data and with TD elements for the dimension values and the metric values. So how does this look in our visualization data? If you check the tables, So let's make this a little bigger. So we check the default tables here and we see it's still named dimension 1. We might change this before we start to work here. And we have dimension and metric. And let's add some second dimension like source. So you see how it changes. So now you see the dimension 1 is an array of home and direct, which is the combination of these two dimensions. And if we would do this for multiple metrics in our table, we would have an array here as well with more than one value. But before we start to write code, I like to rename this. So my idea is that we name this variable here to the same value that we name this name here, but maybe we use a singular instead. So go back to your config.json and there you have it, the ID dimension 1. Let's make it to dimension in singular and change the label as well so we don't get confused later. Let's do this with metrics as well. And there we go, we saved this config.json. And now we can start with our visualization JavaScript. And before we start here, I like to do some changes as well because I do not like this data name here. Let's rename this to something like visData. So I guess there should be multiple data variables in the end. So we start with creating some elements. At first, we might define our body to a variable that is body. So body equals document.body. Okay. And then let's create a table with the variable name like tbl equals document dot create element table like this. Let's give it an ID, not with var, but with tbl.id equals CustomTable. And we're going to create some tags like the table head and the table body and some rows for the head and even for the body. So tbl head equals document create element t-head, and of course it's a variable. And let's copy this to be a little faster here 2 times. Let's also say this is the same for body and its name is tBody, tag name, and also for the first header row, which contains all the column names. And let's say this variable should be named head row. And this is a tr element. Okay. So we defined the first header row and the table body. Now we need to fill the header row with the column names. So I want to go back into Data Studio and check the data again. Yeah, we renamed this, so maybe I need to upload this first. So upload the config.json, override it to see the new names so I don't make a mistake. So reload this. And here you see our new variable names with dimension and metric inside the fields. So in it, you see the name variable. So we need to call the visualization data, fields, dimension, and then each name. We're going to need a for loop for this. We start with the dimensions with for, and then we need a variable I equals 0. I should be smaller than the vis data dot fields dot dimension dot length. And this dimension should be like this, of course. And I should increase each time the loop runs. So for each dimension, we want to create a new tag. We're going to name this var cell equals document dot create element, and this is a th element. Let's add some value for this. Cell dot inner text. I think inner text is fine for now. Maybe we use HTML later. And this should be this data dot fields dot dimension, and then we need the I dimension. So in the first loop it's going to be the first element, and the second run it's the second element, and we want the name of this dimension. And for the last part of our loop, we add the cell to the header row, and we use append child for this. Head row dot append child cell. So this is how we add our dimensions. Now we add our metrics. So we're going to copy this for loop here. Let's make it a little easier. And change the dimensions to our metric singular, and here as well. So this should be our head row, and our head row needs to be appended to the table head. So we're gonna say table head append child head row, and of course the table head should be appended to the table table should be appended to the document body, and later the table body should be appended to the table as well. So we might write this code right now. So it's table dot append child table head. And the same thing with table body and body append child TBL. Okay, so now we have our head row. We fill our head row with all the dimension names. We fill it with all the metric names. And we append everything to the table and to the document body. So one thing is left, and this is all the data, of course. We need two for loops for this. Let's look back at the data. In the tables variable, in the default variable here, you will see all the different rows of our data with the dimension and metric here as well. You see the dimension with home and direct, and the metric with the new users metric. So we need to loop through all these rows, and inside of each row we need to loop through all the dimensions and of course through all the metrics. The first for loop that runs through all our rows should be like this. For, and then we use a different variable name here. Let's use j equals 0, maybe with var here. And then j should be smaller than this data dot tables dot default like this dot length, and again j plus plus. So we loop through all of our rows, and for each row we create a row element, var row equals document create element tr. And of course we want to append this in the end to our table body. Table body dot append child row. So now we need to do basically the same thing as we did with our header row, just with the body. We can even copy our for loop statements from here and reuse this here. So for each of our dimensions, we want to create a new cell, var cell equals document create element td for the body table cell, and cell dot inner text should be this data dot tables dot default. Now we have to set the right row, which is the row j dot dimension, and we have to select the right dimension, which is I, because we used it here. And yeah, that's it. And we add the cell to the row again. Same thing like here, only with the row and not with the header row. So this is for the dimensions. We do the same thing for our metrics again. And change all the dimension to metric, like this. Okay, so this should be it. Let's recheck it again. So we define our tags with the table, table ID equals custom table, table head, table body, head row. We fill the header rows with dimensions, append this. We fill it with the metrics and append this. And for each of our data row, we create a new row and fill it with the dimensions and refill it with the metrics. And in the end, we append everything to our tables and the table appended to the body. So yeah, this should work. One thing is missing. Let's check the library again. So here it says we should write this statement, new.js table, with the hashtag, which equals to the table ID example. We didn't use the example here, we just named it custom table, but let's copy this to our code, to the end of the code, and let's see, what do we name it? Custom table like this. So it should be custom table here. Save and upload this to the cloud storage. After reloading our Data Studio report, it looks like this. So I think it's all right. We can use it. We can even make it bigger. And there is something going on here. It looks like multiple tables are being created. Let's look back into the code and see what happens. Everything looks all right at first. But if you look at this row here, body append child table, in combination with DSCC subscribe to data, it means that for every new update Data Studio is doing, the body will get a new table and the others will be there as well. So we can fix this either by saying body.innerHTML should be table, or by deleting the body in the beginning of the function. I decided to delete this body. So let's go back to the beginning of the function and say document.body.innerHTML should be this. Let's save this and we upload this to Data Studio. After a reload of our Data Studio report, we see that even if we change the table, the error is gone. We see multiple console logs here, but the table does not change at all. Let's delete the first table here, which is the regular table, and make this new table a little bigger. And close the console. So we see the sorting kind of works. The columns get a little bigger, so we need to fix this later. But the sorting works very good. We can even search for Google. Yeah, this works as well. And if we add some other metrics, like sessions, this is working very well. So that's it for today. We added our first table to Data Studio. In the next video, I'm going to add some comparison data to this table. So see you next time.